Hello, history lovers, and welcome back to Tempest Fractum, the channel where we dive into the moments that shaped our world. I'm Arif, and today we're traveling back to the late Middle Ages to explore one of the most ambitious experiments in Scandinavian history, the Kalmar Union. This was a bold attempt to unite Denmark, Norway, and Sweden under one crown, but, spoiler alert, it didn't quite go as planned. Why did this union come to be? What made it crumble? And what can it teach us about power and unity? Grab a snack, settle in, and let's break the timeline together. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell for more history deep dives. Let's set the scene. It's the late 14th century, and Europe is a mess. The Black Death has ravaged populations, trade is booming but chaotic, and powerful neighbors like the Hanseatic League, a German trading powerhouse, are flexing their muscles in the Baltic Sea. Scandinavia, made up of Denmark, Norway, and Sweden, is a region of fierce Viking descendants, but they're not exactly holding hands and singing songs of unity. These kingdoms are rivals, competing for trade routes, fertile lands, and influence. Enter Margaret I, one of history's most remarkable women. Margaret wasn't just the Queen of Denmark, she was a master strategist. By 1387, she'd become the de facto ruler of Denmark after her husband, King Haakon VI of Norway, died. Her son, Olaf, was set to inherit both crowns, uniting Denmark and Norway. But when Olaf died young in 1387, Margaret didn't miss a beat. He adopted her great-nephew, Eric of Pomerania, and maneuvered to have him crowned king of both Denmark and Norway. But Margaret had bigger dreams. She saw the Hanseatic League's growing influence and thought, why not unite all of Scandinavia to counter this threat? A united Scandinavia could control Baltic trade, secure borders, and stand tall against external powers. This dream led to the Kalmar Union, formalized in 1397 in the Swedish city of Kalmar. What was the Kalmar Union? Picture this: Denmark, Norway, and Sweden, along with their territories, like Finland under Sweden and Iceland under Norway, agreeing to share a single monarch while keeping their own laws and councils. On paper, it was a brilliant idea. The agreement was sealed in 1397 with the coronation of Eric of Pomerania as king of all three kingdoms. Margaret, though, was the real power behind the throne, pulling the strings until her death in 1412. The Union's founding document, the Letter of Union, was signed at Kalmar Castle. It wasn't a full merger, each kingdom retained some autonomy, but the monarch was meant to act as a unifying figure. The goal? A stronger, richer Scandinavia that could dominate Baltic trade and fend off threats like the Germans or even the Russians. For a while, it worked. Margaret was a genius at balancing the interests of the three kingdoms. She centralized power in Denmark, strengthened the monarchy, and kept the nobles in check. Trade flourished, and the Union seemed like a winning formula. But, as we'll see, cracks started forming almost immediately. Here's where things get juicy. The Kalmar Union was built on a shaky foundation, trust between rival kingdoms. Denmark, as the strongest partner, often called the shots, and this didn't sit well with the Swedes. Sweden had a growing noble class and a history of independence, and they weren't thrilled about being Denmark's junior partner. When Margaret died in 1412, Eric of Pomerania took full control, and let's just say he wasn't as diplomatic as his great-aunt. Eric leaned heavily on Danish interests, taxing Swedish merchants and appointing Danish nobles to key positions. This sparked resentment in Sweden, where nobles and peasants alike started whispering about rebellion. One major flashpoint was the Engelbrekt Rebellion in 1434. A Swedish noble named Engelbrekt Engelbrektsson rallied miners and peasants against Eric's heavy taxes and Danish dominance. The rebellion spread like wildfire, and Engelbrekt became a folk hero. Though he was assassinated in 1436, the rebellion weakened the Union and showed that Sweden wasn't going to bow to Denmark forever. Meanwhile, Norway was quieter but not exactly happy. Norway's economy relied on fishing and trade, and many Norwegians felt sidelined by Danish priorities. The Union was starting to feel less like a partnership and more like a Danish power grab. By the mid-15th century, the Kalmar Union was on life support. Eric was deposed in 1439, and a series of weak kings and regents couldn't hold things together. The real death blow came in the early 16th century with the rise of Gustav Vasa, a Swedish noble who became the face of Swedish independence. In 1520, the Danish king Christian II tried to reassert control over Sweden in a brutal way. He invited Swedish nobles to a banquet in Stockholm, only to arrest and execute them in what became known as the Stockholm bloodbath. Big mistake. This massacre turned the Swedish people against Denmark, and Gustav Vasa led a rebellion that gained massive support. By 1523, Gustav was crowned king of an independent Sweden, officially breaking the Kalmar Union. Denmark and Norway remained united until 1814, when Norway was ceded to Sweden after the Napoleonic Wars. That's a story for another video. But the dream of a united Scandinavia under one crown was dead. Sweden went its own way, building a powerful empire, while Denmark and Norway licked their wounds. So, what's the legacy of the Kalmar Union? First, it showed that unity is tough when power isn't shared equally. Denmark's dominance alienated Sweden, and without a strong leader like Margaret, the Union couldn't survive. It's a lesson that echoes in modern alliances. Think of the European Union or even NATO. Trust and balance are everything. Second, the Kalmar Union shaped Scandinavian identity. Even today, Swedes, Danes, and Norwegians share a sense of Nordic kinship, but they're fiercely proud of their distinct cultures. The Union's failure reinforced those differences. Finally, it left us with fascinating what-ifs. What if the Union had lasted? Would Scandinavia have become a superpower? We'll never know, but the idea of Nordic unity lives on in modern cooperation, like the Nordic Council, where these countries work together peacefully. And that's the story of the Kalmar Union. The grand vision that united Scandinavia for a moment but couldn't withstand rivalry and ambition. What do you think? Could a united Scandinavia have changed history? Let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed this dive into the past, give us a thumbs up, subscribe to Tempus Fractum, and share this video with your fellow history buffs. Want more Scandinavian stories? Drop your suggestions below, and we'll see you in the next episode. Until then, keep breaking the timeline.